1S video done by regular car reviews. The reason why I decided to do this is because, for one thing, I have never ever done a reaction video of any kind before, and I think it will give a decent feedback, as well as I would just like to have a good time doing it, because I like to just do something a little different. So I guess it's time to do one thing, and that is cue the music. Now, before I do crack on this reaction video, I do want to point out a few things here today. For one thing, I do not want to start any copyright issues, because I am definitely not that kind of guy. I just wanted to give like an honest reaction of one of the best videos of the Trabant on YouTube. Secondly, I would love to collaborate with Mr. Regular, because honestly, this is a very rare slice of American and French history here, and I don't think anyone has featured one on their YouTube channel besides a small YouTuber who I got in touch with down in the Washington, D.C. area. So to have one of these on your YouTube channel, that'll definitely boost some views. Thirdly, as I am a previous Trabant owner, having owned one at the start of my YouTube career, I think it would be pretty cool to give feedback and thoughts from one Trabant owner to another. So anyway, let's get started.
What country is this car from?
It no longer exists.
Nice.
Hotter than night.
It's 1985. You're living in East Germany. You applied for a vehicle voucher or whatever, and the acting Ministry of Occupying Transportation Overseas, whatever, granted your request for a vehicle. Your vehicle will be available for collection in 3 to 5 years. Do you get to choose your vehicle? No.
That most certainly is true. People in East Germany did not have much choice in vehicle, and the same could be said for other neighboring Soviet countries. But a 3 to 5 year wait was expected for export markets such as Hungary, Poland, and the Netherlands. But in East Germany, because the demand was so high but supply was so short, the average wait time was anywhere between 15 to 18 years. It was not uncommon for parents who were expecting their first newborn to put the newborn on the waiting list, so by the time the newborn was old enough to drive, he or she would receive a car themselves. In fact, it was such a pain in the neck to the point that used ones would sell for a higher profit. Just like how things were during COVID, when people had the engine chip shortages, and how used cars went for slightly more of a premium than new cars.
Here it is. Your vehicle will be a Trabant. All glory to the Hypnotoad. It's a Trabant or nothing.
Being the only car is a bit of an understatement. There was another car made in the former DDR called the Wartburg, which featured a 3-cylinder, 2-stroke engine. And I've sat in a Wartburg, and it is night and day different. Would I say it's the nicest car in the world? Absolutely not. But it was mostly reserved for doctors, lawyers, as well as members of the East German police known as the Stasi.
Manufactured with almost no changes from the 1960s to the fall of the wall, the 2-cylinder 600cc 2-stroke premix air-cooled Trabant was the defining car of Cold War East Germany. It has a 4-speed manual transmission that's on the column, which would be fine if it made sense. But it doesn't.
Mr. Regular here is absolutely right. The Trabant does feature a 4-speed manual on the column, and the pattern is perplexing if you're not used to it right away. I've had times where I shifted into third instead of first, or even reverse when I was stuck in traffic. You'll see just how confusing it can be.
So, yeah, it's on its side.
Yep, it's backwards from like a standard American column shift.
I've forgotten everything again. So let's try this again.
All right, so
I'm in the middle.
You're in the middle. You straight down from where you are is first.
One.
Straight up from there is second.
Okay, now let me reorient myself.
Okay.
Middle. Down's first.
Down is first.
Up is second.
Up is second. Down to the middle, towards you and down is third. And straight up from there is
Straight up the
fourth.
stairs. Oh, this is completely backwards. Okay.
Yep, completely
Middle,
backwards.
loose. Down to second.
First,
What did I say?
second.
Right, because that's where second is.
That's where second should be.
Down to first.
Down to first.
Up to 2nd. Back down third.
Yep.
Up for fourth.
Up for
Okay,
fourth.
so if I think mirror image,
And be very, the best thing I've told people is be very deliberate with your shifts. Make your moves, like between gears, very deliberate. Whereas instead of kind of trying to slosh them from side to side, just be kind of click and then boop, boop, boop. It shifts better that way.
The owner here is absolutely right. If you do just go boop, 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 like he says, the Trabant shifter is actually very direct because it connects directly to the transmission via just a tube that goes straight from the shifter all the way to the transmission. It is one of the best feeling manual transmissions out there.
all right, and we get to go up Mount St. Helens.
Excellent. Let's do that.
Whoa, the brakes! You weren't kidding about
I
those.
wasn't kidding about them.
Holy moly, we got to go down this hill.
Yeah, if you are used to driving newer stuff, the Trabant's brakes might terrify you. But if you're used to driving older classics, let's say from before World War II, especially given the fact I've driven a 1935 Auburn 851, it's not terrible. But compared to, let's say, a brand new Honda Civic, it'll scare the wits out of you if you're not used to it. Because it is four-wheel drum brakes, and anti-lock only exists in your wildest of dreams.
Okay, push in, but not to reverse.
There you go.
There's first.
There's first. That's the exhaust rattling.
What was that? I've got a flashing light there. Oh, that's my turn
That's your
signal.
blinker.
Yeah, the Trabant's turn signals do not auto-cancel for simplicity. But let me tell you, I've had several of my friends drive my Trabant, and they were wondering, what is that mysterious ticking sound as they're driving down the street? Little did they know they're driving around like an old man with his turn signals still on. It's happened to me a couple of times.
There's third,
There's
and I
third.
think we're probably with this hill, we're going to stay in third.
Third would be a good gear for it.
Yeah.
Just make sure you stay on the gas.
All right, on gas.
The coast, you can just throw the clutch in.
Okay. All right, we're almost at 60 kilometers an hour.
Uh-huh.
Maybe some fourth gear
It'll do
action.
fourth.
All right.
Now in fourth, you can let off the gas. It will freewheel and the engine will return to idle.
Okay.
And if you let off and then get back on it, like wait like 2 seconds and then get back on it, you can feel the engine do that, and where it catches.
Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting feeling.
Huh.
The owner of the Trabant is absolutely right. The Trabant does have something called a freewheeling device, but it is only active on fourth gear. And what that does is it allows one-way transfer of power, and the engine basically disengages from the transmission. So when you're driving in fourth gear and you let off the gas, the engine will return to idle, and the car will keep going. It will just coast along like nobody's business. What that does is allow the pre-mixed fuel to deliver the right amount of oil to relative of the speed of the engine. So let's say if you're going down a hill, you're not starving the engine of oil. You could just put it into fourth, and the car would just basically go back to idle, and the car would just roll along. The only downside to that is there is absolutely no engine braking. It feels like you're on roller skates. And it is definitely an interesting feeling, especially when you get back on the gas and the engine basically cuts back in again, and you basically drive it like normal. But if you are not used to having no engine braking, like the brakes themselves, it will be a bit of a disconcerting feeling. So my advice to you, if you do own one of these cars, freewheel at your own risk, especially on American roads, because, like I said, there's no engine braking, and the brakes are not the best.
It is not the worst car I've ever driven, because I was expecting this to be terrible. Worst is still the Oldsmobile Bravada. That sucks.
Yeah, that is true. I would give that platform of the Chevrolet Blazer, the GMC Jimmy, and the Oldsmobile Bravada one thing for credit. The engine, the 4.3-liter Vortec V6, was definitely its strong point. But the build quality was like that of a 5-year-old assembling a garden shed. I remember during my earlier years of high school, my grandfather had a Chevy Blazer from 1997. And needless to say, the door latch didn't want to stay in place half the time, so while we drove that thing to school, he had to use a ratchet strap just to hold the door shut. So starting that thing took like 3 minutes. It was no fun. It really wasn't. But you had to do what you had to do to keep an old car going, especially if it was prone to rust.
I understand the 26 horsepower engine. I understand the ride-on mower-sized fuel tank. What I didn't understand was how a car this light, with Duraplast body panels, has such pathetic brakes.
Pathetic brakes they may be, but at least they stop the car. And yes, the Trabant is very light for what is a 4-seat automobile. The Trabant weighs only 1,350 pounds. So you can imagine how much it squatted a little bit when I had some people in the back seat. But despite having 26 horsepower, it scooted along.
And you can't compression brake in it because it's a two-stroke. If I downshifted on these downhills, the two-cylinder would rev high, but without throttle, no fuel is being delivered to the cylinder. And crankcase. No fuel on a two-stroke also means no oil. No oil means no lubrication. No lube means dry friction. Dry friction means...
Sounds like Mr. Regular is not used to driving a two-stroke car, and it's not often an American gets a chance to do so. It takes a bit to get used to.
The only way to descend hills in a Trabant and not gas it down a hill is to shift into fourth. Fourth is the only gear, it has a freewheeling function in fourth. So you get to go down a hill and ride the crappy brakes that you don't have. So who would voluntarily just drive one of these things around in the United States? This guy.
Oh, come on, I would drive one too. Having hardly any brakes and a two-stroke engine and singing its head off? Who wouldn't turn that down? Most people, but I'm not like most people.
You have a 1990 Trabant 601S. It was built in East Germany. It's actually one of the last 601Ss ever built. 1990 was the last year, and this car was built in April of 90, and they ceased production in May of 90.
Yeah, it completely baffles people knowing the car was made so long with hardly any changes. The biggest change of them all was in 1984 when they upgraded from 6 volt to 12 volt. 1985, I think they upgraded to electronic ignition, but overall the design stayed relatively the same for almost 30 years. It is crazy to think just how many cars were so much newer than the Trabant in terms of not being outdated and stuff like that, because when I tell people my car's from 1984, they look at me as if I got two heads or with having penises as fingers. It's amazing. I love that.
How did you come to obtain this?
I actually bought it from a fellow who lives near Seattle. He collects old Soviet and Russian and other Soviet Eastern Bloc cars, and he sells a few of them. And I had always wanted one of these, and I saw that he had one for sale, and so I jumped on it. I have had it for about 2 years. I got it in 2020.
And what interests you about this car so much that you just had to have it?
A big interesting thing about it is the history of the car, because I find Cold War history and Soviet history to be very interesting, and this is an iconic vehicle, and I'm a car guy, so this is an iconic vehicle that goes right along with that.
I very much agree with what the owner is saying here, because honestly, the automotive industry of East Germany, Russia, and other Eastern Bloc countries is something to be studied about, because we take cars today as a tool of not just getting us around, but also a thing to reflect our personalities. The Trabant, the Polish Fiat, and so many other Eastern Bloc vehicles were not designed to do that. They were just designed to work and get a country on the move. It is definitely fascinating.
And kind of the idea of driving something like this when it's your only choice. You don't have choices in vehicles. You get this or nothing. This is going to sound very vain, but my favorite thing about it is the attention it gets.
Oh yeah, the Trabant does turn heads, for better or for worse. I couldn't take mine anywhere without having some conversation with somebody. And it was always a joy. And I don't think he sounds too vain by saying that, because not many people here in the United States know what they are. When I go down to the International Spy Museum to give tours of Trabants to those interested, they often say, "Oh, those cars are so cute. What is it? Tell me more." I mean, it is just a awesome, awesome feeling to give people history and lessons to what is indeed largely unknown, especially outside of East Germany where those cars came from.
I love that. That's kind of a side note. I do really enjoy driving it. I find it a really fun, sort of visceral experience to drive it. Probably my least favorite thing about it is it's one of the nicest cars I've ever owned, and I'm always afraid about scratching it or hurting it. That and trying to get parts for it can be a real pain.
The owner is right. It is definitely a fun and very visceral experience. It handles like no other car I've ever driven. It's very go-karty and definitely not terrible for a car that has its roots dating back to the 1950s. And honestly, it's a lot of fun. It really is. And he is absolutely right. Getting parts for it, especially here in this part of the world, can be a bit challenging. My advice to you, if you own one in the United States, please have a source and a reputable one, because some people will tend to rip you off, especially if you're sending money overseas. But if you have a reputable source, all the better.
They still make almost every part for the car, but you have to order them from Germany and wait a considerable amount of time to get them.
Have you had to do any major repairs since you've owned it?
I have not, actually. I've only done maintenance. I've done spark plugs, belt, tires. I've really not had to do anything to it. It's gonna need, it's due for some work, because the guy I got it from never drove it. He just kept it in a shipping container, whereas I frequently drive this car.
Yeah, you will have to expect to wait a while for parts, because the car was obviously not sold here in America when new. It was sold in Soviet countries. But I will say this, parts are relatively cheap and affordable, and they are still plentiful. My advice to you, like I said earlier, make sure you have a reputable source, because I currently have a reputable source, albeit in Germany. And I remember when he delivered my brand new engine for me, and he went above and beyond. Not only did he manage to clear U.S. customs, which are very strict because of the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and that field in Pennsylvania, but also I was just completely amazed that he was able to carry it on the plane with him in a suitcase. And you can just imagine the amount of smiles I received when my friend in New York told me the engine's in the back of my truck, and I get back there and it's nowhere to be seen. And yet he makes a phone call in German to my two friends, Martin and Jenny, who not only flew all the way from Germany to Ohio to help me install the engine in my car, but also had the engine in a suitcase in a Kia K5 rental car. I am not making this up. The dedication is phenomenal. It truly is. In fact, Robert Dunn had a new shift linkage for his Trabant when he rebuilt the transmission on his car. And the shipper, Ed, flew all the way from Budapest to Dallas and carried the shift linkage on the plane with him as if it was like a very thin cane or something like that. That's stuff you just don't get in other car clubs, and I love that for it, because it is so questionable, but yet so fitting.
So it's had...
Not just a show car.
It's not just a show car. I drive it to the store. It's not a trailer queen, despite what it, is showing off today.
What typical reactions do you get when people who know what you have?
Who know what I have? It's either, oh my God, is that a Trabant? Or why? Why did you buy one of these? I have spoken to a couple of German people, and they told me, like, do you remember these from when we were children? They were awful. Why do you have one? But the other reaction is from people who don't know what it is frequently, that thing is adorable. What is it?
Oh my God, that brings back such good memories. Oh my God. Yeah, I took my Trabant to a car show in 2018, and what parks right next to me is a beautiful candy apple red metallic 1960s Ferrari worth over $16 million. People walked right past the Ferrari up to my Yellow Wonder, and I got all the questions. Much to the dismay of the Ferrari owner. But to be fair, he was a bit of a jerk, so karma's a bitch, isn't it?
And then I get to, do the nerd thing of the actually, and tell them all about it, which is fantastic. The longest I probably drove it was, I used to have about a 40-mile commute to work one way, and so I drove it to work and back a few times. But that's the farthest I've ever taken it from home under its own power, is about 40 miles.
He is definitely a brave soul amongst all the big SUVs and trucks that American roads are so well known for. Driving at 40 miles, holy cow. The farthest I've driven mine from home was about 10.
What is like the gas mileage?
Terrible. It's actually quite bad. It only has a 6 or 7 gallon gas tank, and I think on average it seems to get like in the low 20s, maybe the high teens, which is really pathetic considering the car only has a 2-cylinder engine.
Oh yeah, the Trabant does not get the best gas mileage in the world. I know some people claim to get about 40 miles per gallon with theirs, which is not too bad. But when I drove mine from my house to my job about 10 miles away, and then I drove it back, I stopped at a gas station to see how good the gas mileage was. And bear in mind, I had a bit of a fuel leak, so I only averaged about 10 miles per gallon. 10 in a 2-cylinder car. But to be fair, it is 2-stroke. It wasn't designed to be fuel efficient or perhaps good to the environment. East Germany didn't really care about those things. What happens with the 2-stroke engine is you have simplicity in mind. The Trabant has no fuel pump, no oil pump because the oil gets mixed into the gasoline, has no radiator because it's air cooled. It is very, very simple.
I love the simplicity of the car because it is very easy to fix with very basic tools. There's no pumps in the car of any kind. It doesn't have any engine oil. It doesn't have, it doesn't even have a fuel pump. It doesn't have a water pump. It's air cooled. It's really fun because it's a 2-stroke engine, so it smokes like a chainsaw when you drive it. And it's a column shifted 4-speed, so it's, you know, it's got this little stub of a shifter and you drive it, and the pedals aren't in front of you, they're off to the side, so you kind of sit with your legs cocked.
You want to show some of this?
Sure. So if you look, the wheel well is right here, so the pedals are actually off to the side because the clutch is here and the gas pedal's that stub way over there. It doesn't even have a fuel gauge.
No fuel gauge.
No fuel gauge. It has one gauge, and that's the speedometer. And that's it. No temp gauge, no fuel gauge, nothing.
So you really have to baby it.
Yep, and if you want to, the gas tank's under the hood, and if you want to check the gas, you have to open the tank and actually look down inside. It's supposed to have a dipstick, but I don't have the dipstick for it.
Having the fuel tank underneath the hood definitely sparks a bit of concern, especially when I'm getting gas for it. When I was driving it home from Florida back to Ohio, I stopped at this one gas station in Alabama, and the clerk came out running with a fire extinguisher in his hand. And he thought I was going to set myself, or the car, or indeed everybody else on fire. Bit unintelligent, that, but it was pretty funny.
And you have to mix the gas and oil like you would for a weed whacker or a chainsaw.
Oh, wow.
So you put the gas in the tank, and then once you've got how many gallons you've gotten, you go back here to your trunk and you get your 2-stroke oil, and you mix it for a 50-to-1 mixture. And then, I know it's probably unnecessary, but I will often shake the car to mix it and then drive off. And people see you at the gas station, as soon as they see you put the fuel nozzle under the hood, they tend to freak out.
Bingo!
I had one person actually go up to the attendant and say, I don't think that guy knows what he's doing. He's pumping gas onto the top of his engine. And the attendant's like, I don't think so, but I'll go talk to him. And the attendant actually came over to me and was like, sir, and looked down and saw the gas tank. They're like, have a great day. And they walked off.
At least his clerk was friendly about it. Mine threatened to call the fire brigade. I thought for sure I was going to get shot or worse. Thank God that didn't happen.
I have been accused of being a communist because I own it. That happened at a gas station once. Someone in a very large pickup came up to me and accused me of being a communist because I own it, which was like, okay, dude, you do you.
Oh God, that's happened to me. Oh my God. It's happened to me in Alabama. Bear in mind I was wearing these military pants that I bought in Mississippi. Just in case, God forbid, I needed to get underneath the car and work on it. And when they accused me of being a communist, I had told them I'm not a communist. And sure enough, they asked me for proof. So I reached inside my pockets thinking my wallet was there, and it wasn't. It was in the car. I just didn't want to get in the car and drive off. So I reached into the pockets thinking I was going to find my keys attached to a lanyard. And sure enough, I was like, I'm not communist. And I pulled out a World War II Nazi medal. And right at that moment, I saw on the back of their truck, they had a bumper sticker that said, of all things, proud to be Jewish. Talk about an oh crap moment.
I think the other one was about a week or two after I got it. First time I took it to town, I had just gotten it licensed and insured. I took it to town. I went to the local Costco gas station in town. And I pulled in, and I'm gassing it up, and this one guy comes over, starts talking to me about it. I'm talking to him, and it's great. And then another guy comes over, and then another gal comes over, and then another gal comes over. And suddenly there were like 15 people gathered around this car. I couldn't get it away from the pump. the attendant from the gas station was one of the people who was there. And I had questions coming, and it was like rapid fire, but they were coming from here and here and here and back here, and I'd answer this guy and then answer this guy, and it's like, poof. That was an experience I had never ever had. It was fun though.
Yeah, I remember when I took my Trabant to the Ohio BMV to get it registered. And sure enough, the lady who was verifying my VIN, bear in mind I had to pop the hood to verify the VIN because the VIN is stamped in the firewall. She looked at that car and said, "Oh my God, that thing is so adorable!" She even went as far to get her coworkers to come have a look at this car. And they were just in shock by how tiny it was. I had never had that experience ever happen at the DMV. Not even when I registered my 1990 Eagle Premier. It was pretty interesting.
I bet it's a source of pride.
It is. Seeing the product of my vanity right here, it's... If you push this car really, really hard, it'll go like 62 miles an hour. And I mean, that is pushing it, and it is unhappy with you. The engine is screaming. It likes to cruise about 45, 50. It's pretty happy there. 35 is probably its really happy speed. But yeah, it'll go that fast, but it is grumpy about it. It's, there's a fair bit of wind noise. There's quite a bit of road noise. The engine makes quite a racket. Because being a two-stroke, it kind of pops and farts, and the exhaust rattles. So whenever you come to a stop, it does this thing, and it's like, it's just so noisy. You try to have a conversation inside, and it's just a lost cause. You can't.
Yeah. Trying to have a civilized conversation in that car, especially in traffic when you're stuck at a red light, it can be a bit challenging. I remember when I took my ex-fiance out, and we went out for a little cruise, like to the McDonald's drive-thru, and I had to keep the engine running because my battery was on its way out. So I didn't want to have to turn off the car and risk flooding the carburetor by forgetting to turn off the gas. And I remember I was at a Taco Bell, and I was like, "I'll take 6 soft tacos," and the lady's like, "What?" I can't hear you. "What?" "I'll take 6 soft tacos." "Say that again." Ugh. And then what's behind me is a GMC Yukon, and I could just see them just going, giving me the thumbs up as I'm trying to shout my head off over the two-stroke engine at the intercom. Wonderful thing. Talk about just pure nostalgia.
I mean, it doesn't even have a blower motor for the heater. The heater is you only get air through the car if the car's moving. It just has this big tube that comes from the grill and goes into the cabin, and that's how you get heat. And because it's an air-cooled engine, it has a giant fan on the side of the motor, and when you rev the engine up, it blows the heated air into that tube, and then the air pushes it into the car. And so if you're coming down the road and you come to a stop, you'll lose your heat. You won't have heat until you start going again. But they built them this way. That they made this exact same car, except for a few minor styling changes, from 1962 to 1990, and it never changed. Same engine, same transmission, same basic design of the car. That's communism. It was good enough, so they kept making it. And I guess one other interesting feature is all the body panels on this car are made out of a material that's called Duroplast. It's very similar to fiberglass, but it's actually made from resin mixed with, and I'm not making this up, cotton. So it's actually made out of, the original ones were made out of old military uniforms that were ground up and pressed with resin at high heat to make this kind of weird that. The frame's metal, but all the body panels are this sort of, it's called Duroplast.
Whenever I used to tell people that my Trabant was basically made of recycled clothing or recycled cotton to make that new material called Duroplast, it simply baffled people. Like, how on earth is a car made of clothes? But you have to hand it to the Germans for their sheer creativity. Creating a car from the ground up is hard, but to have one that has to have a steel shortage as well as a Cold War trade embargo going on, so they couldn't get sheet metal from America, and the stuff from Russia was, frankly, crap, to say the least. It just blows my mind that they came up with that new material out of pure necessity, and it's one of the most interesting things about the car.
Actually, the trunk lid is a good... how it's kind of wobbly. All the body panels are made, and all the body panels on the car are glued to it. None of them are screwed on. They're all have this weird adhesive that glues them to the car, which is odd. Like I said, I think the only fluids it contains in the car is the brake fluid, the gas, and let's see, the brake fluid, the gas, and the washer fluid. That's the only fluids it has.
The Trabant, or Trabant, is a car that represents an ideology designed to fail. The notion that you have no choice but that which we provide. So be thankful you're on a waiting list at all, even if it takes a decade to see the inside of a car with no power. Not even the power to disappoint. Because there's nothing to anticipate from the rusted ladder of gears and fatalism. Oh yeah, and an odometer was offered as an option. And East Germans had to drive this for years for want of better options. And that's only among those who were lucky enough to get them. You see, it could even take more than a decade from the time this car was ordered until you finally received it. Hell, in some cases, working-class citizens were placed on waiting lists as long as 13 years, which led to pandemonium on the used car market. The immediate availability of a used Trabant made it a prized commodity, so they were commanding higher prices than new models. Some as high as double. This despite the car rarely changing at all over much of its lifespan, from its founding to the fall of the Eastern Bloc. Basically, the Trabant 601 was introduced in 1963 as the People's Car of East Germany, or the German Democratic Republic, a part of East Germany that was occupied by the Soviets. It was manufactured by the East German automaker, the name I can't pronounce and will not try.
You know I'm a huge nerd when it comes to that car when I can actually pronounce that name of the factory. It's not too hard, but it takes a bit of finesse. Here goes. VEB Sachsenring Automobilwerk Zwickau. And in case you're wondering what the S in the Trabant's hood logo stands for, it actually stands for Sachsenring, the factory that built it. A little bit of useless trivia for you.
And the idea with the Trabant was to offer you something that you could depend on for not a whole lot of money. The trade-off, of course, being that it was unglamorous and not particularly refined, but maintenance and repair, at least relative to other cars of the time, was intended to be easy enough for the average citizen to perform themselves.
That is very, very true. In fact, spare parts were also hard to come by during those Cold War days, so it was definitely not uncommon for women to use their panties as a belt just to get them by until the actual belt came in. They had to do what they had to do. Gas was rationed. It was a tough time.
A modern-day lawnmower that you can buy at Home Depot or Lowe's is more complex than this. But with the Trabant, you had a means of extraction for East Germans, who would drive a route from Hungary to Czechoslovakia as a path to West Germany. It was known as the Trabi Trail because it involved packing up as much as a Trabant could hold to make the journey. Granted, they could only enter West Germany once they received a special permission to drive their Trabant through, since this vehicle did not meet West German emission standards. And why would it? You could set fire to a pile of Sega Game Gears and that would pollute less than this car. The Trabant produced 4 to 5 times the pollution of the average car. This is basically an East Germany Tata Nano. A car with basement-level function and style that calls to mind the same lack of effort you get from a junior high administrator planning the spring formal. This year's theme is the music of Steve Winwood. So much has been written about the history of this period that it almost loses track that the society of this era is far less interesting than the stories and struggles of the individual. The tales of daily life, of escape, of defection, of persistence in the face of a changing geopolitical landscape. There can be no more modernist a notion than that of the individual trying to keep ahead of a world that is growing more and more unfamiliar, more hostile. The present is brought into stark relief in comparison with the past, so that an abstraction of the familiar takes root. Things become more new, more challenging, in its break from the safety of tradition. And this is how we end up with a car that subordinates individualism beneath a monopolistic representation of
The state.
a bland attempt at style and experimentation is presented to fulfill the modernist prerequisite to cast aside old forms. Trabant 601S, the car equivalent of Krusty the Clown screening Worker and Parasite. And yet there was style. In the face of a bureaucratic boot heel, the people who designed the Trabant initially still desired style art. There's no reason for this grille to be here. It's an air-cooled car. There's only 2 holes underneath this. One for the quote-unquote heater and, the other for an air intake. That's it. But they put a grille here anyway. The taillights could have just been off of a lorry, but they tried to make some Cadillac-esque, maybe Austin Healey style taillights, something that looked nice. Yes, we are oppressed, but we will still create art. Call it the human spirit. Call it artistic expression. This could have been a box to fit government requirements like a Grumman LLV. But no, the designers of the Trabant wanted hope. Yes, the car pollutes. Yes, it's terrible to drive. Yes, it's unsafe. Yes, it's overpriced. Yes, it's this or nothing. But we will try to find a sunny day. We will try to make something pleasant to look at. Something happy. Something cute. A beautiful object to gaze upon in a cruel world. I put this up with the Volkswagen Karmann Ghia as one of the most beautiful little cars ever made. It's beautiful in its defiance. The Trabant 601S represents humanity's determinism to keep moving forward.
I will be fully honest here. When I first saw that ending, it brought a tear to my eye because not only was it very factual, but it just shows how difficult it was for the East Germans. Having everything state-owned, having a 13-year waiting list for a car with no gas gauge, no power, no creature comforts. And yet they created a car that was not only stylish for its launch in 1963, but provided hope for those who dreamed about owning a car. Not just a Trabant, but a car itself. We take cars for granted these days. We take them as not just means of transport, but also there are some people out there in this world who dream about owning a high-end supercar, about owning a Rolls Royce. And yet, the Trabant was the pin-up poster for millions. And it was not often those millions would get approved to be on the waiting list, and it would be a long wait. And if, God forbid, they got sick on the day the car was supposed to be delivered, the wait would have to start all over again. It was a very tough time, and a time that will never be forgotten, especially as those Trabants, Wartburgs, and other Soviet-era cars snuck through the net that is the Iron Curtain. A time that happened almost 37 years ago, and yet it still impacts Germany to this very day. It is quite remarkable. Mr. Regular, if you're watching this, I just gotta say that was a very well-made video. I really appreciate that you did not mock the car in any way. But sure, it is easy to mock. It is easy to malign it. But is there one thing that is not easy? Is to forget what that car represents. Anyways, viewers, I am going to conclude this video here. If you liked it, feel free to smash that thumbs up icon and like this video. Don't forget to subscribe for more content, and feel free to jot down in the comment section of what video you want me to react to next. And I'll have more videos come along very soon. Thank you so much for watching.